I was sincerely affected with this discourse, as indeed, who could be otherwise, and I resolved not to think of going abroad any more, but to settle at home according to my father's desire. But alas, a few days wore all off, and in short, to prevent any of my father's further importunities, and a few weeks after, I resolved to run quite away from him. However, I did not act quite so hastily, neither as the first heat of my resolution prompted, but I took my mother at a time when I thought her a little more pleasant than ordinary, and told her that my thoughts were so entirely bent upon seeing the world, that I should never settle to anything with the resolution enough to go through with it, and my father had better give me his consent than force me to go without it. That I was now 18 years old, which was too late to go to apprentice to a trade, or clerk to an attorney. That I was sure, if I did, I should never serve out of my time, but I should certainly run away from my master before my time was out, and go to sea. And if she would speak to my father to let me go one voyage abroad, if I came home again, and did not like it, I would go no more, and I would promise, by a double diligence, to recover the time that I had lost. This put my mother into a great passion. She told me she knew it would be to no purpose to speak to my father upon any such subject, that he knew too well what was my interest to give his consent to anything so much for my hurt, and that she wondered how I could think of any such thing after the discourse I had had with my father, and such kind and tender expressions as she knew my father had used to me, and that, in short, if I would ruin myself, there was no help for me. But I might depend I should never have their consent to it, that for her part she would not have so much hand in my destruction, and I should never have it to say that my mother was willing when my father was not. Though my mother refused to move it to my father, yet I heard afterwards that she reported all the discourse to him, and that my father, after showing a great concern at it, said to her with a sigh, "That boy might be happy if he would stay at home, but if he goes abroad, he will be the most miserable wretch that was ever born. I can give no consent to it." It was not till almost a year after this that I broke loose, though in the meantime I continued obstinately deaf to all proposals of settling to business, and frequently postulated with my father and mother about their being so positively determined against what they knew my inclinations prompted me to. But being one day at Hull, whither I went casually and without any purposes of making an elopement at the time, but I say, be there, and one of my companions about to go by sea to London in his father's ship, and prompting me to go with them, with the common allurement of a seafaring man, that it should cost me nothing for my passage, I consulted neither father nor mother any more, nor so much as sent them word of it, but leaving them to hear of it as they might, without asking God's blessings or my father's, without any consideration of circumstances of consequences. And in an ill hour, God knows, on the 1st of September, 1651, I went on board a ship bound for London. Never any young adventurer's misfortunes, I believe, began sooner or continued longer than mine. The ship was no sooner got out of the Humber than the wind began to blow, and the sea to rise in a most frightful manner, and, as I had never been at sea before, I was most inexpressibly sick in body, and terrified in mind. I began now to seriously reflect upon what I had done, and how justly I was overtaken by the judgment of heaven, for my wicked leaving my father's house, and abandoning my duty. All the good counsel of my parents, my father's tears and my mother's entreaties, came now fresh into my mind, and my conscience, which was not yet come to the pitch of hardness to which it has come since, reproached me with the contempt of advice, and the breach of my duty to God and my father. All this while the storm increased, and the sea went very high, though nothing like what I have seen many times since, no, nor what I saw a few days after, but it was enough to affect me then, who was but a young sailor, and had never known anything of the matter. I expected every wave would have swallowed us up, and that every time the ship fell down, as I thought it did, in the trough or hollow of the sea, we should never rise more. In this agony of mind I made many vows and resolutions, that if it would please God to spare my life in this one voyage, if I ever got once my foot upon dry land again, I would go directly home to my father, and never set it into a ship again while I lived, that I would take his advice. and never run myself into such miseries as these were any more. Now I saw plainly, in the goodness of his observations about the middle station of life, how easily, how comfortable he had lived all his days, and never had been exposed to tempests at sea, or troubles on shore. And in short, I resolved that I would, like a true repenting prodigal, go home to my father.